So I put 100 gold pieces aside. And I do that in case any of those farmers the next day or the next week come to me and say, oh, you know what, I actually need my money. I need to, my son needs a haircut, or whatever the need might be. But anyway, I put 100 gold pieces aside as reserves. And then the remainder, so this 900 gold pieces, I lend out. Let me do that in a different color. I'll do it in green. 900 gold pieces I lend out. So it's an asset. But the gold is gone. I take that gold, this 900 gold. Remember, I had 1,000 gold pieces come in. I kept 100 of it, and now I'm going to lend it to someone who has a really good project. So say, normally you would lend it to a bunch of people, but for the sake of simplicity, let's say I lend it to someone who has an irrigation project. He's going to take that 900 gold pieces and pay a bunch of people who are probably not doing anything anymore because the apple crop has been harvested and sold. And they're going to build an irrigation canal so that more land is usable to make more apples the next year. And I say that's a great investment because they're going to make more apples, or they're going to sell the water to the farmers, and they should be able to pay some interest to me, right? So I give my 900 gold pieces to them to to essentially dig these ditches. Well, the 900 gold pieces, that then goes to the workers, right? The borrower borrowed them and then paid it to the workers. 900 gold goes to the workers. And so after the project is done, you have a bunch of workers with 900 gold pieces, right? Well, these workers, they're just like the farmers. They say, well, I don't want to put it in my bed, and I want to get interest on it, and it's not safe inside my house. So let's say that my bank is the only game in town. So they go back to my bank, and they say, hey, Bank of Sal, I want to deposit my money with you. And I say, great. So what I do is I take their 900 gold pieces, and I take it as a deposit. So let me try to draw that as a deposit. So I take their 9. I'm going to try to see if this is 1,000. 900 might be about that. 900 gold pieces. So this is the farmer's deposits, right? That was kind of the initial money. So then I get the 900 gold pieces from the workers. I want to make this as neat as possible, but I didn't want to go through the pain of having multiple banks, because you could do this with just one bank. Maybe in a future video I'll do it with multiple banks, just to show you that all the deposits don't have to go to one place. But it's the same idea. Anyway, so these 900 gold pieces are essentially deposited back into my bank for safekeeping, and I say, boy, I don't need to keep all of this 900 gold pieces here. I could lend it out again for some useful project. So once again, I say, well, these are demand deposits, which means that these farmers could demand them at any time. So let me put a little bit aside. I know statistically that no more than maybe 10% of them will come in a given day. So let me set aside 10% of that. So I'll have 10% reserves. So I'll set aside 90 gold pieces. Set aside 90 gold pieces, and then the other, let me do that in the lending color. The other 810 gold pieces I lend out. And let's say I lend it out to some entrepreneur. And remember, I'm getting interest in all of this, but we're not concerned with the interest right now. We're concerned with the money supply. So I lend it out to some guy who wants to build a factory. Build a factory for cutting tools. That'll help all of us become more productive when we have to harvest our apples, or maybe even digging the ditches. So build factory. Build factory. So once again, this 810 gold pieces, they're going to go to the construction workers or the contractors who built the factory. So let's call it, factory contractors, the people who build the factory, contractors. Well, once again, now they have 810 gold pieces, and they're like, wow, I don't like keeping it in my house. There's that nice fancy vault that Sal has, and he gives interest on it. So they take those 810 gold pieces, and they deposit it in my bank. So they take those 810 gold pieces and deposit it in my bank. And then I could continue, well, let's just say that I could just continue this process, so forth and so on. And just so you know, it doesn't go infinitely, right? Because every step of the way, we're having a little bit less. And I'll do the fancier math on how to figure out how many steps we can do. But let's just stop it there, just for the sake of brevity and just so I don't run out of space on this. So they take 810 gold pieces, and I kind of, for the most part, feel that I've lent enough money out there, so I keep all of this 810 gold pieces as reserves. So I don't lend that out. Although I could just set aside 10% of it, 81 gold pieces, and then lend the rest of it out. But I don't do that. I just keep all of those 810 gold pieces as reserves. So this is my balance sheet after, maybe if these transactions occur all at once or over the course of the year, this is what the Bank of Sal's balance sheet looks like. These are my assets and these are my liabilities. And notice, assets are still equal to liabilities plus equity. This was equity. This is liabilities, right? These are deposits that I owe to people. Deposits equal liabilities. From a bank point of view, they're assets for those people. Liabilities. And then these are my assets. Some of them are cash money, right? In magenta, this 810, this 90, this 100. These are gold coins that are sitting in my vault. So that's definitely an asset that I have. And then these are loans that I lent. Well, at least this and this, these are loans that I lent out to somebody, and that's an asset as long as they pay me back. So now we have set it all up. My question to you is, how much money is there in the system or in our economy? So it all depends how you define money. So let's make a definition. Let's say I make a definition called M0. And this is just how much gold is there, right? How much gold in the system? Well, we can go and count it, right? Well, notice all of the gold is being held in my bank, so we just have to go to this one bank and count how much gold it has. It has 100 gold here, 90 gold here, 810 gold here. So if you're 810 plus 90 plus 100 is equal to 1,000 gold. So there's 1,000 gold pieces. And that makes sense, right? Because we had 1,000 gold pieces to begin with, and we didn't mine for any new gold, or we didn't turn any, we didn't use any lodestones to turn lead into gold or anything like that. We just had the original 1,000 gold pieces, and there's no way to create more. They don't reproduce on their own, so we still have 1,000 gold pieces. And we can kind of view that as our narrowest definition of the money supply. Now let's say another definition. Let's call this M1. M1, and I'm running out of time. And that is, how much money do people think they have in terms of their checking accounts? Well, the farmers think that they have 1,000 gold pieces. The original ditch construction workers think they have 900. And then the factory builders think they have 810, right? So if you add them, it's 1,000 plus 900 plus 810. Let's see, that's 1,900. What is that, 2710? 2710 gold pieces. So, if you went and surveyed everyone in the city and you said, how much do you keep in your checking accounts, or how much do you have on demand deposits in a bank, if you added up all of those numbers, you would have 2,710 gold pieces, if I added my numbers correctly. This is the multiplier effect, and this happens whenever you have a fractional reserve system. And this is what people say when they talk about the money supply. It depends how you measure it, and this is what people talk about when they talk about money being created. We had 1,000 gold coins, but because of this multiplier effect, people think that there are 2,710 gold pieces. In the next video, I'll address the issue of whether they are correct to think this. See you soon. So let's think a little bit about what happened in the last video. I'll review again these different notions of money supply, and then let's talk about whether it's fair for people to think that they really have the money that they have. So in the original video, after the crop was harvested, the farmers deposited 1,000 gold pieces in my bank. Then I lent out 900 of those. I had to keep some reserves in case those farmers wanted some of their mony back. And I figured, no, they would never need more than 10% at a time. I lend it out. They build someone has a great idea to build a irrigation canal so that more fields become usable and get access to water. So to build that irrigation canal, they take those 900 gold pieces and they pay a bunch of workers. Those workers now have the gold pieces, and so they need someplace safe to put it. They put it back in my bank. Now I get 900 gold pieces of deposits. I put 10% aside again, and now I lend out 810 gold pieces. And let's say I lend it out for an entrepreneur who wants to build a factory to build some type of tools that might make the apple harvest more efficient or faster, or need less labor or whatever. But whatever, that entrepreneur takes those 810 gold pieces and pays the builder in the town, and then the builder now has the 810 gold pieces, and then he gives the money back to me in my bank because I'm the safest place to keep it. So, and I stop the chain there. You could keep going on and on, although there is some end. Notice that these values get smaller and smaller every time, and we'll do a little bit of math on that to figure out how far it can go. But then I take the builder's money and I said, well, this banking idea is a new idea to me. I'm just going to leave it all as reserves. I want to see how it all plays out first. So then we said, how much money is in the system? And it all depends on how you define money. And we made one definition of money called M0. And M0, we said, we'll call this our narrowest definition. And this is literally how much gold is there in the system, or how much stuff is there in the system that could be immediately used for conducting a transaction. And I'm assuming, for the sake of this argument, that none of these players actually kept any gold in their pockets or kept some cash in their wallets for whatever, for a rainy day. Although if they did, we would include it in this calculation. I assumed that everyone always deposits their gold with Bank of Sal. So when we did that calculation, there was this 100 gold pieces of reserves that we had set aside at first, then 90 here, and 900 here, 900 here, and then 810 here. And so if you add those up, you get 1,000 gold pieces in the system, which makes a lot of sense because we originally had 1,000 gold pieces in the system, and gold doesn't, in the example, at least as I described it, we didn't have anyone discovering any new gold, nor was any gold eaten or destroyed in some way. So it makes sense that there are 1,000 gold pieces. But then there's a more interesting question. If you went around the city and you asked everyone how much money they had, they'll say, oh, well, I have this much in my checking account with the Bank of Sal. I mean, if you asked me how much money I had, I would tell you how much it's in my checking account. I actually have very little cash in my wallet right now, if any of you are thinking of mugging me. All of my money is in a checking account. So if someone asked me how much money do you have, I'd give that number. So if you went around the town and you asked everyone how much money do you have, and you added it up, you would get the total of their checking accounts. And so let's see, we had 810 gold pieces from the contractors, 900 gold pieces from the ditch diggers, and then 1,000 gold pieces from the farmers. And then let's see, 1,900 plus 810, right? You get 2,710 gold pieces collectively in checking accounts. And since I'm the only bank, that's the total of my liabilities here. And we call that M1. And I'm calling these for a reason, because these are the actual words that are used by economists and our government officials. But there's a couple of really interesting questions here. One is, how did 1,000 gold pieces get turned into 2,710? And then, is this 2,710 a real, does it represent real wealth, or was this some kind of weird shell game we played and it represents some type of weird pyramid scheme? Well, how it got created, we went through the mechanics, right? The second, every time I set a little aside, I lent some out, and then they deposited, etc. And that's how it got created. The interesting question is, does it represent real wealth? The answer is, it represents real wealth if each of these investments were real investments. So if this 900 gold pieces that were used to build this irrigation ditch or whatever it is, if that project actually does generate at least 900 gold pieces of future wealth, essentially it can at least pay back the 900 gold pieces. It'll probably generate more if it's a good project. But if it generates at least 900 gold pieces of future wealth, then this is a real asset, right? This is a real asset. Likewise, if this factory really does generate at least 810 gold pieces of future wealth, if it really will allow us to produce that much more apples or gold or whatever, this is a real asset here, right? So these people, this wealth really does exist. This 2,710 gold pieces of quote-unquote wealth really does exist, as long as the projects that were the justification for borrowing the money actually do generate future wealth. So there's a couple of things to realize. There are not 2,710 gold pieces in this world. There are only 1,000 physical gold pieces. But if these projects are real projects that are actually not mismanaged, they're not just